Welcome, everyone, to episode 5 of Developer Dialogue. I'm your host, Jean, also known as Strategy Wargamer. I am with my co-host here, Eric Tortuga Power, and we have a really special guest for you guys this time. We have Oliver and Ilja from the Grand Tactician. These are the guys, the masterminds behind the upcoming, or actually it's already in early access, the Civil War 1861 to 1865. Welcome, guys. I'm really excited to have you guys on the show. How are you guys doing?
Hey, folks. All doing well, thank you.
Hi. Doing good.
That's awesome. So we have Tortuga here. Matt couldn't join us for this episode. I'm kind of curious. Before we begin, there was one thing I kind of wanted to jump into because we might have some people that actually join this interview and not know what Grand Tactician and the Civil War 1861 to 1865 is. So I was wondering, yeah. I was wondering if you guys can kind of give a quick elevator pitch on what the game is and what it's all about.
Yeah, can you say a few words about it?
Yeah, Grand Tactician is a basically operational level real-time Civil War strategy game, and it combines a campaign layer with the tactical battles. That's it in short.
We had this developer on the show, I believe, 2 years ago. So it's been a while since we had you guys on the show. I wanted to ask, from June 2018 to today, how do you guys feel in terms of the game? In terms of how far the game has progressed?
I think 2 years later now, and after 4 years of project duration, we are all quite exhausted. And especially the EA period, the first month was quite hard for us. So we used the first month after EA released to fix bugs, get rid of crashes, and fix memory leaks. So now we're I would say in step 2 or 3 in the EA phase where we try to enhance the AI and also to rebalance the campaigns and the battles, which is still a long way to go, I think. And I think the last step would be, and I think it should be somewhere around November and December, to add the last game enhancements. For example, there was huge demand for multiple saves in campaigns and also saves for battles. And in parallel, Ilja and Peter are working on enhancing the content of the game, so further scenarios and battle maps. And so after 4 years, we're coming close to the finish line, and then we, I think, have a bit more time to breathe, and which doesn't mean that we're finished afterwards. We would like to continuously work on the game, but I think the main elements of this game are done after 4 years, and yeah, that's a real good feeling, because you can go outside again, enjoy the nature, meet your family again. So quite a good thing lies in front of us.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years ago. We were still planning the campaign side of the game, and we were still finalizing the battles. So it has been quite a lot of work since then. So now everything we were talking about last time is basically coming to reality. And that's the last 2 years.
Wow. So I wanted to kind of before we dive in further. So what are you? Just so our viewers know, what kind of aspect of the game each of you work on? Or Ilja, are you doing programming? Oliver's doing art. How does that work?
Well, Oliver, so that's me. I'm the coder and the publisher of the game, and Ilja allowed me to come up from the coding dungeon for today, and maybe Ilja, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm the designer of the game, and in addition to that, I've been working with the art directing. I've been making the sounds, battle maps, scenarios, databases, and stuff like that. So basically everything else but coding.
And the third team member from the main line is Peter, who has not joined us today, and he's doing all the 2D and 3D art. And there is also Vasil, who is doing all the paper maps, for example.
Yeah, those paper maps really. I think they blew. I knew they blew Historical Gamer away, and they just for me it was just jaw dropping. I was like, wow.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you a question about that because I noticed that the maps it's beautiful, and the art, the music. There's a lot of thematic, artistic elements to the game, and that part is extremely polished, AAA level polished, in my opinion. The beautiful map, really good music and all that. So it made me think, how did you guys go about directing the resources, the time resources of the game, to get it to its current state? Did you guys prioritize from day one that you wanted to have really good art and really good music, or was that something that just fell into place in the middle somehow? How did you guys go about doing that?
Well, when Ilja met me in my hometown about 4 years ago, we drew the first lines of the project, and that was one of the main elements we wanted to focus on, because it was especially me who always tried, I think for 30 years now, nearly, to somehow create such a Civil War game. And that was because I've seen the Ken Burns documentation about 30 years ago, and I always tried to code such a game, and never succeeded in finishing that. But now we are close to the finish line, and it was always a very important topic for us, because we think that especially music and also paper maps and images are underlining the mood of this era.
Yeah, and the actual road to these elements to appear in the game, it has been quite interesting. For example, I used to draw the first paper map, which was, to be honest, it looked like shit. And then I was actually looking for a drummer, because we wanted to make some drum and fife music. So I was looking for a drummer, and I ran into Vasil, who is a reenactor as well here in Finland. And while we were talking about drumming, he also said, "Okay, did you know that I'm also drawing these historical maps and making websites and stuff like that?" And we talked and we tried a few things, and then we found the guy to draw the maps. And for example, he also did the soundtrack with his band. So basically, we ran into this great guy who had all this talent by accident. So a lot has happened. Good things have happened.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's it's kind of like fate. We all wanted a game like this, and it just kind of all settled in. You guys recently just went into early access, I believe, over the summer. I wanted to ask you guys, how did your experience go with early access? Did it meet your expectations?
Well, to be honest, from my opinion, I think it was a bit too early that we decided to go into early access, because we developed far into the summer. I think we developed the game still in May or June. And so there were 2 months left to test, and but at some point we needed to draw a line, because there were so many ideas, and also the first ideas from the beta testers came in, and we could have continued developing for another year or 2 years. So it was especially Ilja, I think that you said, okay, now we need to draw a line and go EA and improve the game during EA phase.
Yeah, we're planning on actually releasing the game, and because we were not happy with the state of the game, so that's when we started to look for the EA option. And during the start of the project, we had basically ruled out early access, but it started to feel like a good option later on. So I think we did the right choice here, but it has been quite a rocky road. But of course, the customers have been very kind towards us and have been giving very good feedback. So we are positive about the early access period going on.
Yeah, I think we also should say a big thank you to the community, which is very supportive and also patient with us.
Yes, I agree.
It seems pretty natural to have you just as a project manager. You can see people setting deadlines, and it's good to have those deadlines. I mean, even if they get pushed back, it really helps to firm up a project's like vision, future vision, to like if you have goals that you're setting and meeting and all. So, and I heard you mention finish line. So obviously you had to draw this line and go, and now you guys are in early access. But finish line, do you guys have any projections for when you expect this game to be fully released? Or, and actually, even a broader question, what is the driving force? Because you're self-published, as far as I know. So, like, what makes you have a timeline at all? Just your own personal running out of finances, or what drives the project?
Well, actually, I think we owe that to the community that we are finished at some point, because we originally estimated to release somewhere around end of 2019, and we knew that we couldn't hold that schedule, and that's why we decided to go EA now. And at some point, as I've said, the community is very patient, and we owe them something, and we want to give something back here. And and also we want to regain our liberty back again.
Yeah, it's a thing about mental health as well, because if you're holding it on and adding stuff, it gets quite heavy. So when you know that, okay, that's the deadline, that's when we're going out, it's actually quite relieving.
One of the things I wanted to ask was a big thing that you guys were mentioning is I believe I had a conversation regarding the AI in the game. I believe you guys mentioned it, I think either in a forum post or I forgot where I read it, but you guys were mentioning over the next couple of months you're going to be focusing on the AI quite a bit. I wanted to ask you, where do you feel the AI is on let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being where you want it and 1 being where you started? Where do you feel like the AI is right now, and what things do you plan to add to it?
I think as we decided to go EA, we knew that, and I think we have communicated that the players are already able to play historical battles, although AI needs to be improved. But there's still a lot to do for the campaign AI, and especially first to rebalance the campaigns and also to make it work, to make the AI think and work. And I think regarding battles, we have released a patch this week which improves the AI for battles, so which means AI tries to better hold the lines, I think we removed most of the blobbing, and I think we are in 7 or 8 of 10 regarding battles, but we still have a long road ahead in terms of campaign AI. So there, it's just a rough skeleton there, and we are maybe somewhere around 3 out of 10, and I'm currently working on enhancing the AI here. But first, we need to rebalance all the issues, so we're just working on the economy part, on the supply part, and yes, if we've done this part of the campaign AI, then we should have we should come to to how the AI behaves on the maps, how the units are moving, and also enhanced the recruitment topics. Yeah, so a lot to do still for the campaign AI, especially in my opinion.
Yeah, for example, in the battles, the AI is now behaving quite well if we compare to what it was maybe 1 year back. There are a few things that still need to be improved. For example, if you have a river line or some other bottleneck, the AI is not very good with those, so it will try to sort of push through a small hole and get decimated. But basically all games have that issue, but of course that needs to be improved. But on the campaign side, like Oliver said, the AI is not yet formulating plans, or it's not actually thinking a few steps ahead. So you will see things happening like the AI abandoning the capital city because it wants to attack somewhere, or it's not going to hold a blockade very well and stuff like that. So that's the main focus for AI improvements, even though in battles we also need to do some minor changes here and there, and maybe a couple of bigger updates regarding thinking about the terrain more.
Just wanted to add from a technical perspective, to improve the AI is very time consuming. So it's quite easy, or it goes quite fast to enhance, to add the save functionality, for example, for campaigns. That's something that could be done in maybe 1 or 2 weeks. But if you need to work on the AI behavior of such a complex game, you need to play dozens or hundreds of hours of situations, always the same situation, and because it's always the outcome is always different, and you need to try to replay every situation that's possible, and that's why it may take further weeks or months to finish that AI stuff.
So in this game, there's basically 2 different AIs, one for the campaign and one for the tactical. I'm kind of curious, how do they communicate and work together? Well, the question is, I guess the question is, do they communicate and work together, and how efficiently do they do that?
Basically, they are not actually communicating, for example, from the campaign map that, okay, you go and attack the main line and I'm using these forces to do some flanking maneuvers or something like that. And that's the current state. But for example, the driving forces behind the AI and the decision making, that is following from the campaign to the battle. So for example, the commander personality, which has a lot of effect during the campaign and battle, that's of course taken into account on both layers. So you have a cautious officer who is not going to attack very aggressively on the campaign map, and when he actually makes contact, he will also be cautious on the battle map and try to conserve his forces and stuff like that. So the actual movements or plans are not in yet, but the driving forces are the same on both layers.
So one other question I had was, as I was playing this game, when I first fired it up, and I think even now, the game, I believe, runs on, correct me if I'm wrong, the Unity engine?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I've noticed with the Unity engine, playing different games, there's like a submarine game and a couple other ones that I've played, that whenever a game runs on the Unity engine, it requires quite a bit of graphical horsepower. And I noticed every time I was playing the game, especially on a campaign map, like, I guess maybe because there's so much graphics or so much stuff going on, that usually my frame rate usually dips into the teens, and I have like a mid-range graphics card. But I even noticed higher-end graphics cards, like with a GeForce 1080, having difficulty to run the game like above like 40 or 50 frames. I'm kind of curious, why does the Unity engine require so much horsepower, and how would you be able to solve that to not demand so much resources from the user's computer?
I'm not sure if it's Unity that slows everything down. If you take a look at the performance and the needed resources, I think most of the performance lag is caused by calculating stuff. So it's a CPU topic. And that's because, especially on the campaign map, and you might see differences between the campaigns 1861 versus 1862, for example. We have hundreds or thousands of units, and also more than thousands infrastructure points where every marketplace or infrastructure point has separate market and goods flow, and all that stuff needs to be calculated. And I think that's something we still have on the roadmap. Not sure if it has something to do with the VRAM, with the graphics card. I think it's more a calculating issue. So it can be improved. Performance can still be improved, but we need to take into account that we have so many objects that need to work in real time.
So you were saying it's more of like a CPU. What CPU would you recommend? Like, if I wanted to play the game at 60 frames per second, what CPU would you recommend for me and the audience who wants to play this game with all that running in the background?
Well, to be honest,
one CPU.
Yeah. I think it's not. I think everybody now, or most of the players have some kind of high-end machines or very good machines, and that should be sufficient nowadays. I think the work is more on our side, so that we maybe reduce calculation stuff, things that does not need to be calculated in real time, which has already been balanced, but there's still more to do, in my opinion. Yes.
Thank you. As far as like going back to the AI, I have a question actually about the interactions between you, Oliver, and you, Ilja, because I'm guessing that with Ilja, first of all, Ilja, we didn't mention it, but you have a very deep theoretical background in tactics, don't you? I mean, or I'm not sure if you're allowed to tell us or if you want it exposed, but we can always cut it out if you don't. But you're, kind of renowned in the real war. You teach, right? You teach tactics, don't you?
Yeah, I teach mechanized warfare.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so this is you're a real source. So I'm trying to imagine and maybe give insight to even other people. You can sit there and look at the tactics of a situation. And Oliver, I don't really know your level of tactical background. Mine is nothing, so there's that much. But
well, I'm a banker, so.
Oh, okay, good. So
that's why the economy looks like it looks.
So maybe only slightly more than my knowledge. So how does it work then when you guys are building this AI for let's talk about the tactical AI. Ilja mentioned, for example, the AI funnels itself through a point, and this creates an issue. And I see that Ilja may have some kind of idea like, okay, well, we need the AI to learn how to form lines before it chokes, or somehow flank or something. How does the feedback go back and forth? Or are most of these things so obvious that you, Oliver, already can identify the problems and there doesn't need to be like a feedback loop between both of you?
I think it's a top-down approach. When Ilja, we have met in person a few years ago, and he has left me, I don't know, dozens or hundreds of papers to where we could go, and also he has written a lot of concepts for every detail issue, and I'm taking up these concepts and thinking about how to implement this. And there's some kind of, we need to find a balance here. What is theory and what is realistic, and what can be done in terms of implementation, and especially how does the AI react to it? Because if we make it too complicated, then it will be very difficult to rebalance the AI. And So that's the difficulty of this issue. But
the other point is basically if you create a tactical engine that is true to life, so it's actually very realistic, it's never going to be fun to play. So there's also that side.
Yeah, and you could spend, I don't know, years to improve the AI. So at some point you need to be satisfied with that, because otherwise there would not be any other function in the game.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think that wargamers expect too much from an AI. We usually just crank up the difficulty if you find you're beating the AI too much. So AI is obviously probably the most difficult thing, in my opinion. I do a little bit of development, but I think it's the most difficult thing for any developer to tackle, because it's an incredibly complex thing. And of course, the difficulty is most people don't really understand that anytime you change the game, the AI may have been broken, or you may have to change the way the AI thinking works. So it's a very difficult thing. So
yeah, that's especially what I meant with balancing. So especially for the battle AI, we tried to really stay close to the concept Ilja has written, and that's quite deep in my opinion. So there we have added refusal of flanks, we have anchored flanks, and that's I tried to add this to the game, and it works quite okay, or it used to work quite okay. But at some point, if you try to rebalance the AI on one side, then the other side won't work that good anymore. So that's why we decided for the campaign AI to set it up not that complex like we did for the battles.
I have a question regarding maps. So I know we're in early access, and when two armies collide, I usually get like a pre-generated map, either like Manassas or something like that kind of correlates to where on the campaign map the terrain. But I'm kind of curious, when you guys officially launch the game with the 1.0 release, are you guys going to be doing randomly generated maps, or would it still be the pre-generated ones?
Basically randomly generating is out of the question at this point. Maybe it can be added later, but the approach we are using is to add a number of more historical battlefields, and then these sort of sets of non-historical battlefields which will appear outside of the sphere of influence for the historical battlefield. So basically, if you go, for example, fighting in Illinois, where a lot did not happen during the war, basically it would have a set of maps to pick from, so you wouldn't have the Battle of Manassas every time you go to fighting outside of the areas where historically the main fighting was done.
Okay. So a lot of Civil War games that I've played, a lot of them, like when you start out in 1861, they always kind of like prohibit the player either by restricting movement of the armies or in a multitude of ways from moving your big Union army down to fight the Confederates at Manassas, or, literally taking out the Confederacy in that first year. I haven't tried this out really yet, but is it possible to do like a quick victory? Like, let's say the war begins, right? Fort Sumter happens. I build up a whole bunch of brigades, divisions. Can I eliminate the Confederacy in that first year of that war before 1862 happens? Is that possible?
I think, Ilja, do you remember? I think a player has managed it in 3 or 4 weeks or so. So,
wow.
that at the moment, we're, as I've said, we need to further polish the campaign AI, and here we also have a problem, or we need to decide where to go, because on the one side we want to be historically accurate, and on the other side it should be not too easy for the Union player, or it should make fun to play. So I think we need to meet somewhere in the middle here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
There's the problem that historically, if you back in retrospect, it's a lot of things that if you would know these things, it would be quite easy, for example, to win the war playing as the North. So we have to figure out some ways to make it not so easy for the player. So, for example, one thing we did already is that before your military gains experience as a whole, not just single units, before that happens, if you fight outside your own territory, your morale will be more fragile in the battles, which basically simulates the situation that you're now invading and the other guy is defending their homes, but it will even out later during the war. But this still needs to be balanced a bit, and of course needs further similar improvements here and there. But basically, we don't restrict the player like some games do, just so that we can make the war longer.
Yeah, and we've been talking a lot about the game, but I mean, this, as you mentioned, this is the Civil War, and you're trying to build it historically. So I guess the question is, how much research went into, how much knowledge and research of the American Civil War itself goes into this game? I can already see the answer from my own experiences already. I can see a lot, but or can you talk about how much you guys have looked into the Civil War? Because again, this is kind of a funny, like, recurring theme that the people who are best at developing Civil War games are not Americans, which is just bizarre to me, because you would think Ajod previously did a very good series on the American Civil War, and now we have this one, and of course none of these developers are Americans, so it's just kind of funny. But anyways, how much research into the American Civil War have you guys done?
If I start, we started with the battle functionality first. So for that, of course, I have quite good basic knowledge about the military history in general. So I knew where to look from, and I dug up quite a lot of American research and literature about the battle tactics and how the battle tactics formed into what they were during the war. So that took quite a lot of reading, but still it was basically well known for me from before. So the main reading I've been doing is about the campaign side. So what are the things that drive one another? And basically, it's not an issue to find the information. The war is quite well researched, but to actually make a fun game out of it is a bit more difficult task, especially if you have very limited resources, like we do, for example, with our team size and time available. And basically, you cannot include everything. And if you cannot include everything, then you need to make a lot of compromises here and there. So that's the problem. And the information is there if you can start looking for it. So, for example, making a single historical battlefield map, it could be quite easier than you could be doing all the research that's needed to get it just right. And we've been trying to do the latter approach.
Well, and I have been studying the Civil War half of my life, or three quarters of my life, but not into great depth here. So I was a few times in the US. I've visited for Sumter, for example. Have read a lot of books about it, but it's not about, I don't know, how the Army of the Potomac was structured in 1862, for example. So that was Ilja's part, and he did a very good job on researching it. And I think, Ilja, you also had a lot of help from the community, what I remember.
Yeah, this has to be mentioned because I have a couple of guys from the US who are helping with the research of the very small details. So I had two guys working with the field army order of battles to get the information right there. And I had one guy who has done basically the whole American Civil War Navy order of battle for both sides, including every single ship. And of course, we cannot include it as such because we don't have all the ship types, for example, submarines and stuff like that in the game. But they have done a terrific job, and a lot of a lot of research has gone in there. So, for example, there's a lot of sources that can be accessed only in the US, and these guys have been finding those links and reading and reporting back.
Wow. That's amazing. That's like a whole wealth of knowledge right there. You got like a whole kind of a research group there. So another question I have was, so I like the underdog, right? Like, so whenever I play the Civil War, especially 1864, 1865, I always like play the Confederacy. I noticed you guys released an 1860, or will release an 1864 campaign, but I do have one question. Do you guys plan to do an 1865 campaign? Like, one thing I always dreamed about was to be Lee leaving Petersburg, right? And like running away from Grant and seeing if I can meet up with Joe Johnston in North Carolina and seeing if I could still win the war, even at that hopeless stage. Is that possible?
Let's put it like this, that the 64 campaign is planned, and that's a promise that you will see that before the final release. And the 65, I think along the same lines as you, I like to play as the underdog. So it's quite, I think it's quite likely that you will see it at some point, but we will not draw a line that, okay, this is when it will be out. There's also a couple of other very interesting ideas being thrown, for example, in the community about how about the campaign scenario where the South has just won the Battle of Gettysburg, and then you have the British army joining in, and then you try to sort of fight on two fronts as the Union, with morale already almost cracking, and a lot of good ideas there, and I think we will implement at least a few more scenarios in addition to those that we have already promised.
Oh, wow. Okay. So since we were talking about those kind of ideas, I'm kind of curious, not right now, but maybe down the line, are you guys thinking about possibly making the game open for players to mod it?
Well, there are already options to mod it. All the databases are stored as text files in the campaign and battlefield folders, so everybody can already mod the game. But what will and we also have an Excel sheet where you can create your own setups quite easily. Also, we are still waiting to publish this Excel sheet because there's work in progress, as we are still enhancing the game and improving it. We would need to upload Excel sheets every 2 or 3 weeks or so, and we may have version conflict. So that's what you can expect. If we talk about graphics or maps, things might look different because Unity here, we use Unity and it is quite restrictive system. You need to paint the terrains, you need to create all objects, and it's extremely difficult even for us to follow all the rules, so that no error pops up. That would be a bit too much in my opinion. So, database, yes, but maps and graphics will be difficult in my opinion.
So since you mentioned, since we're on the subject of the Unity engine, I know Unity allows the developer to compile for multiple platforms. I know like you can compile for Windows and Mac and Linux, and even like I believe the mobile softwares. So I'm kind of curious, would you guys down the line like kind of expand the game to different OSs like Mac or Linux?
I think we should not rule out this option. For the moment, we just try to keep our heads over water. But why not? Yeah, Unity has quite a cool feature to set this game up for other versions, for other systems. So high probability, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's the early access phase, which is difficult because even with one OS, you have a lot of work and a lot of updates, and to keep another version in parallel up to date, it would be too much work for us. Then we need to recheck the situation, reassess it.
You need to imagine that we have, I don't know, maybe how many versions did we already produce, Ilja? Maybe I went live with more than 70 versions, and in the background I created some, I don't know, 200 maybe, and now we have 3 build versions, so there are several hundred versions during development, and even if you set up a second system in parallel in the last few months, it would mean a lot of effort for us.
Wow. I do have a fan question here. This is not from like the chat, but somebody on my YouTube channel posted this, and he was kind of curious if down the line we would be able to do this, if we could change the size of when we're recruiting a brigade, instead of it being a default, to make like a brigade at any different size. So make like a 800-man brigade. Would that be possible down the line?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that there are a lot of good ideas coming from the community, and that's also something we want to give back to the community, so that we are reacting to their demand. And so we, for example, now talk about, okay, what does the community say? What do they want? And we evaluate if that is possible, and maybe push our own ideas a little bit into the background. And such ideas like enhancing the functionality of resizing the brigades should be doable very quickly. Although the problem at the moment is that we have hundreds of topics still in the pipeline that needs to be worked on. So we need to find a slot for that with a good priority, if you know what I mean. So I promise we read every proposal. We maybe cannot answer to all threads, but we're taking up ideas, and you will see the one or other idea implemented in the game later. Yes.
Cool. I'm a little bit of a noob. Okay, so there's a lot of people that know the game better than me. Surprisingly, people are like like already masters in the game. I was never able to figure out like how to promote my officers. I want to ask the experts here. What's the trick to that?
Yeah, the trick is that they are promoted automatically. So when you appoint a commander, for example, a lowly lieutenant or lieutenant, like you say in America, and you appointed him to command a battalion of artillery or maybe infantry brigade, then when you close the management panel, he will be automatically promoted to appropriate rank. So depending on his background and experience, it could be a colonel, it could be a brigadier, and it works like that. One thing that could be improved later is that there's no sort of seniority system in place, or there is, but the commanders don't mind about it. So if you have a major general who has been a major general for a couple of years, and if you promote a lowly captain above him, he won't mind in the game, but maybe he should, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think quite a lot of players don't actually realize that when the war started, most of the officers were basically captains and lieutenants, and then they had these volunteer ranks given to them depending on their position in the army. So most of the West Pointers who were commanding brigades, then corps, maybe armies later, they were in quite low rank if you think about today's system.
Yeah, because what I was trying to do in the beginning was trying to like promote Grant from I forgot what rank he was, lieutenant or captain, all the way to lieutenant general, and I was like, how am I able to do this?
Yeah, you have to arrange his steps. So you first give him a brigade, and then maybe a division corps, and at a later point you can appoint him the lieutenant general.
Another thing that I had was like, So I noticed like on the when you're going through like the economy system and the production system, the union has a tremendous amount of factories. And I was thinking, I was like, if I'm the South, right, is it possible for me to kind of send my army north, right, and like raise entire factories or even possibly cities to the ground? I haven't tried that yet. Am I able to do that?
You mean to construct them, or?
No, like if the Union had like, I guess, an arms factory in New York and I send Lee all the way north and I wanted it to like, let's say, destroy the factory or maybe even like raise New York City to the ground. Am I able to do that? I haven't tried it yet.
Well, that's the thing we're currently working out. So if you move your armies, then the front lines are shifted into a certain side. And if the factory or any other important infrastructure point, we call it IIP, is within the new front line, then this building changes sides. You can also raid it and damage it so that the output is coming down. And there are also options to but that is handled by the AI at the moment to create new factories. So that depends on certain economic conditions. And in the past, originally we also thought about the ability to construct companies or factories somewhere on the map. But we, to be honest, we have not implemented this so far. We wanted to focus more on the military aspect of the war and reduce the micromanagement of the economy in the background.
Yeah, and currently we cannot raise cities to the ground. So maybe something to add for the 64 campaign.
Yeah, but I mean, if for example the infrastructure around the city is destroyed or damaged, then you have secondary effects. So, for example, the prices would rise tremendously. The jobless rate would go up. The population gets poorer, then tax revenues are coming down. So there's still a mechanism, there's already a mechanism in the background, but maybe we need to visualize it a bit more.
Yeah.
I have a question based on exactly this, the economy and all that. It's one of the very first things a user will see if they're clicking through the top user buttons. One of them is economy, and then you can just let your jaw drop, looking at all the every different factory, all the different farms, everything is implemented. It's very deep. But then when I look at the options the player has to interact with this, I don't see much. Basically, the way I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I think the user interacts with the economy is basically just through the budget screen. They can set different tariff levels or investment levels. It's like maybe 6 or 7 sliders. And there's no direct interaction, as far as I can tell, with the underlying economy, which apparently is very deep, though. And if I compared this to maybe another game like Victoria 2, I'm not sure if you guys have played, but it's got this very deep system, but you actually kind of interact with it, or it seems more important to the player to manage their factories and all that. So what is the economy doing in this game? Is it essentially just a really, really complicated budget simulator? Or is there something that the player, how much like attention should the player be paying to where the farms are, where the factories are? You know, what's the expected like feedback for the player and, you know, player goals with the economy?
Well, the main goal here is that to simulate the economic part of the war, but just the player, yes, you're right. He's only able to move budget sliders, to increase subsidies, for example, and research policies and all that stuff drives the economy into a certain direction. We had the feeling that a lot of players, and I've learned from the 7 Years' War, didn't want to dive that deep into the economy system because as you've said, it's very complex. So the player should see the effect. If, for example, if some IRPs are raided, if ports are blocked, if weapon imports don't come in anymore. So that's the final effect the player should see. But I'm not sure if we should make build 'em up strategy game here. As I've said, we were close to it so that the player could, like he can do with supply depots, for example, could place industry somewhere, or at least create areas where corporates may settle down. That was already planned, but I somehow had a feeling the players want to focus more on the military aspects of this game. But I don't rule out that we maybe add similar topics, options, a bit later. For example, we have buildings in the game like hospitals that are currently not used. So maybe we give the player the opportunity to place it somewhere, or at least allow placement somewhere. So yeah, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the actual problem here is not that it would not work, but because it's a very slow process, because in this game you basically have to plan ahead. So, for example, if you go against the southern ports and start blockading, it will not have effect the next day or the next week or even the next month, but maybe during the third year in the war, you will start seeing the shortage of goods, weapons, material. And of course, there's the problem at this point that most of the time you will not reach that time during the campaign, because players move a lot quicker than the commanders did historically. So that's one of the things we need to balance. So when we talk about campaign balancing, it's things like this, and not, for example, balancing the power balance between south and north. It's more about balancing that it would sort of force player to consider his moves a bit more carefully. So, for example, a bad operation or campaign could backfire more.
Originally, we wanted to add a road to war scenario, for example, which could have started in 1850. Oh. And there the economic aspects would have been much larger than they are now, as Ilja has described. So yeah, that was probably one of the reasons why we said, okay, that has not that top priority for us anymore.
Well, that's understandable. I mean, if I was to play devil's advocate, so first of all, I should say I love having seen all the economy in there. Like a person like myself who likes playing Victoria 2 or some of those other more economy-focused war games, I like those a lot. So I completely applaud the fact that they're there. But to play devil's advocate, somebody might, I mean, you were talking about how CPUs slow down and all the calculations, and I'm just imagining the immensity of the matrix that has all these different locations producing for the economy. So to play devil's advocate, would it potentially, if the economy is right now, is there a possibility to even just reduce the economy to get CPU increase, or is that not bogged down anyway?
I think it's certainly one possible solution, but we can also slow down the rhythm of calculation. I think the biggest performance killer are the units. We do simulate hundreds and even thousands of them, and also all the aspects, all the supply topics, moral calculations, commander improvements, experience, training, fatigue, and all that kind of stuff. So that takes a lot of performance, but we will improve that.
So the other question that I had was regarding tactical combat. So one thing I've noticed in a multitude of games, and I think Historical Gamer mentioned this, was couriers. I think he was mentioning like Scourge of War. You have he was mentioning Scourge of War, I believe. Couriers, if you, like, for example, if you have a general on one side of the battlefield and you're sending a message to a unit on the other side of the battlefield, let's say there's a enemy unit in between them, that's the game would just constantly just send courier after courier after courier, and they would just constantly get captured. I'm kind of curious. I noticed in this game, the couriers just kind of go right through the enemy and make it to the friendly unit. I'm kind of curious. How did you guys discuss how the courier system was going to be working, or are you guys planning to make any changes to it in the future?
Yeah, we discussed it at least a couple of times, and even right before the early access release, that are we happy with the system we have now? And I think it's sufficient for visualization of the order delays. So when designing, there were a couple of examples you could look at. For example, Scourge of War, which you already mentioned, and the predecessor, Take Command, which does it in one way. And then you have, for example, the French strategy game called Histoire, where you have the same system in place, except that it doesn't visualize where the courier is going. So you don't care about his movement as much as you care about the reply you're going to get maybe in a couple of hours. So we did discuss this. For example, should you be able to kill the couriers or capture the courier and his message? And it's one of those things where you have to do some compromises so that the game is still playable, and but still has all those mechanics like order delays in place, which I think were one of the key reasons the command and control during that time why battles took the way they usually did. It was even though it was a linear warfare in a way, it seldom was very well conducted because of the huge armies, inexperienced commanders, and problems with command and control. So I would say there are things to still improve. For example, if a unit is out of reach or you have an enemy unit in between, it could be handled differently, but then it falls into the technical basket, so to say, and then it's up to Oliver to think, is it possible, is it doable, and what are the ripple effects?
Yeah, I think it would be technically possible, but it's a further performance killer, and I think yes, there might be situations where the courier runs into enemy lines, but I don't feel that this is a prior one topic at the moment. So maybe we find other solutions in the future.
I have a fan question by Finnish Jaguar. He mentioned, what game mechanic were you most interested in implementing or created yourself to help simulate the Civil War?
For me, it was definitely the idea of doing real-time campaign and combining that with the battle layer. So sort of backdoor approach for the operational art of war, because you cannot have it both ways, so that you have on the campaign layer all the same details and on the battle layer. But at the same time, I wanted it to have effect on how you maneuver your units on the campaign map, what you will see in the battlefield, and what will the outcome be when you come out of the battle. So this link between the battle and the campaign, the fact that even campaign is real time, so when you give the orders to the units, it's very difficult to time the movements correctly, and you will have delays, and you will have unseen enemy units surprising you, and you will have the order delays so that you cannot react to everything. Then transforming this into a tactical battle with the reinforcements moving in, the readiness, the entrenchments, stuff like that. I think that was and still is the most interesting to myself.
I think here our profession flows into the creation. For me, it was as banker, it was the economic part of the war, of every war, because I think first the economy breaks, so it's one of the most important aspects of a war. And I wanted to simulate this very accurate, but without, as we've already mentioned, without needing to too much micromanagement here. So what I tried to add here, to implement here, is the close link between military warfare and financials and the economic system. So, for example, if there's a blockade, then weapons are not imported anymore from Europe, then cotton is not exported anymore to Europe, which leads to price reductions in the southern states, which leads to increased poverty, for example, reduced tax revenues, which then makes it difficult for the player to raise new armies, to pay them. The rating goes down, and at some point there's very high attrition due to desertions, for example, and the game would be lost in this case. So that was the most interesting part for me.
Well, kind of a follow-up question to that. Similar, now that you guys have gotten at least pretty far along the development process, is there anything that, if you could, you would go back and change, or anything that stuck out to you about the development process so far that you didn't imagine going, when you started out?
Yeah, go on, Ilja.
Yeah, you go first.
Well, I would make maybe some topics a bit less complex, so that it doesn't need that much time from a technical perspective to rebalance, to enhance. But I think we are on quite a good road, so that also the feedback was quite good from the community. So regarding the balance between depth and playability, yeah. But definitely maybe in the background, less complex implementation.
Yeah, for me, I would also perhaps streamline a couple of things, because now that they're complex in the background, we can see the side effect when balancing. So if you touch one value, you actually touch maybe 10, maybe 100 values, and it's a quite difficult matrix to keep together. But maybe the one main thing that I was fighting myself was the campaign map. I think I used months to just plan the campaign map, what it should include. For example, would we go all the way to California? Should we at least add New Mexico, Old Mexico, or go deeper into Canada and stuff like that? And that was one of the things that, because it has had so much effect on other topics like the economy, the warfare, and of course it was one of the things that you had to compromise again. But I think the outcome is now quite solid. So if we had, for example, all the way to New Mexico, maybe California even, then we would have to focus a bit more on the supply situation and attrition, because basically you cannot march large armies from coast to coast due to the weather, terrain, lack of roads, lack of infrastructure, stuff like that. So the fighting there was on company, battalion, regiment scale, while the actual civil war, as we think about it, was in armies, corps, divisions. So the campaign map was it for me.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, imagine that a lot of the development process that went into 7 Years' War is benefiting you here. I don't know. So Ilja, you were on that, but Oliver, were you also involved on the 7 Years' War project, the game?
Yes, I've started the project, and Ilja has joined me. I think it was Ilja.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have it the other way around, so I apologize.
No problem. I think Ilja was, and we developed Pomeranian War DLC together. So it was the 7 Years' War was more a fun project, and yes, lessons learned. It was a lot of micromanagement, and everybody said, okay, he doesn't understand how the economy worked, and that was, lessons learned. We said, okay, then a bit less micromanagement, let the AI do a lot of stuff in the background. And also what I've learned from a technical perspective was that we need some kind of very broad engine to work on next. And that was Unity, for example, because the engine that was used to develop the 7 Years' War was very old and was not supported anymore a few years later. So it was hard to upgrade the game to next levels, or nearly impossible. And that's why we have chosen Unity, and I think that worked quite well.
Yeah, I actually came along after the release of the 7 Years' War game, because when I played it, I somehow managed to bump on it in Steam. I don't know how, but I played it and realized that, okay, this game is doing a lot of things right. So it had basically all the things that I think affect warfare, and it was very ambitious and very well done. So after that, I got in contact with Oliver, and we started sort of working together. So I gave feedback on how things could work, and that way we started working together. And during that time, with 7 Years' War, I think the most important thing for me was to develop a sort of way to communicate with a guy who is in a different country than I am, and we think in different ways. So I think I'm not insulting Oliver if I say that he's thinking in more like zeros and ones and Excel sheets, and I think in very different ways. So when we were creating the 7 Years' War sort of post-release features, learned how to put my thoughts in a more Excel sheet-like form, so Oliver could first of all read it and then interpret it the same way I was trying to tell the thing. So I think we saved a couple of years of development in this game with that experience.
This is my last question. So as we're wrapping up the interview, so the one question I have is this: once you guys finish this game, and this is like down the road, I'm kind of curious, once you develop this engine and kind of add your components to the game, is it possible down the line that you guys would be interested in other conflicts to expand to?
That was the original idea, yes. So we wanted to create a series of games under the Grand Tactician label, which is focusing on conflicts between, let's say, 1600 and 1900. Mm. But to be honest, that's far away at the moment. So we have a lot of work to do with the Civil War, and have no detailed plans at the moment where to go next.
Yeah, but such a complex and complicated engine, if it starts to, or when it starts to work correctly, it would be quite a waste to not do something else on it. So maybe that's a hint, maybe not.
Yeah, especially I see it because, you already have the campaign and the tactical map separated. So you could translate this very well to any other time period just by changing the tactical map if you need. I mean, changing the way the units work on the tactical map.
American Revolution.
That one you might not even have to change too much.
Yeah, that's right. But what you need to take into account is that we are very focused on this special conflict at the moment. So there is a lot of stuff that was implemented only for this special war, because we didn't want to create an engine that works on a high level, which can be easily rolled out to other conflicts. We wanted to go in depth. We wanted to have this music, these videos, these factions, And no real diplomacy, for example. So if you want to create other conflicts, like, I don't know, some European conflicts where there are 10 parties involved, then you would need to, I don't know, replace a third of the engine at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
To paraphrase, right? No engine survives first contact with its implementation.
Clausewitz.
I have one other question as well, just about DLC. Have you guys considered, like, I know early access is, we'll have a release at some point, but, if you want to put a pin in some of these questions, some of these things like the economy down the line, or you guys consider just finishing this release and then getting it stable, everything, taking a break, seeing your family, and then maybe coming back to it in the form of DLC? Is that an option you guys are considering?
We don't rule that out at the moment. There are a few ideas, but first we owe our players a really cool game that's challenging, that makes fun. And if that mission is accomplished, we go our next steps.
Yeah, and I have a personal thing with the DLC. I hate game companies that basically design their game so that they leave stuff out so that they can sell it later as a DLC. So we have a lot of things in our pocket still that we have not had the time to implement. And if we improve the game further, it's not something to put a DLC label on. So it would be, in my opinion, something completely new or different to have it as a DLC, and the basic fixing and adding the rest that we have prepared but didn't have the time to implement. That's something to be added in the patches or free LCs, whatever you want to call it. But I wouldn't, for example, make 1865 campaign as a DLC if it doesn't change, for example, the campaign map completely or something like that.
Yeah, so I guess I believe that was Eric's last question. So as we're finishing up, I know, you guys were, I believe, was it like a few weeks ago, you guys were on like the front page of Steam, right? And I just wanted to quickly ask you guys, how did you feel about being like on the front page of Steam with the Grand Tactician being on there?
It was kind of surreal, but yeah, the more we popped up on the front page, the more work I saw in front of my eyes, to be honest.
Well, you guys are doing an incredible job. I really love the game. I mean, there's the strategic component, tactical component. I know the AI is not where you want it to be, but honestly, when I first played the game, I was a little scared, because I was like, all right, maybe I pumped this up too much in my head. But when I was playing it, I was just like, nope, this is more than what I expected. So I wanted to say thank you, guys. You guys literally are like legends now. you can get you can get out the cigars and, start lighting them up.
Wow. Let's let them finish early access first.
No, I need to go back into the coding dungeon now, so no time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it'll be 2021 when you guys release it. The game will be absolutely perfect. But I want to say thank you from me for making this incredible game. I've been waiting decades for it, and you guys delivered it. So special thank you from me. And I wanted to ask before we close out, did you have anything that you wanted to kind of mention or that we didn't cover?
Well, one thing to mention again is the volunteer helpers in the project from the early days to the later days. A lot of the people have changed during the project, but everybody has been doing a tremendous job adding value to the program we are creating, and it has been a privilege to work with guys with basically so much knowledge about the thing they are doing, and also the ideology that, okay, these guys probably need my help. I'll just ask them if they want it, and it's great.
And I would like not only to thank the community, but also you guys, because you helped us spread the word about the game, and that keeps the project alive. So we need to improve the game further, and we're we're very thankful for every help from your side and from the community. So thanks for that.
And I plan to continue covering it. And if I could, I would get like a billboard and just stand in Times Square, letting everybody know about this game. But
very good.
Thank you guys for coming on the show. And I'm hoping, maybe when you guys release 1.0, if we can have you guys back.
Yeah, if we're still alive.
All right, awesome.
Only one needs to stay alive. So
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for coming on this show. And that does it for episode 5 of the Developer Dialogue. And we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Okay, thanks for the invitation. Bye, guys.
Yeah, thank you a lot, Oliver. Thank you, Ilya.